This podcast is made possible by Planful.
Hello, this is Greg Clevenger, CFO of LiveVox, and you're listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 836.
So I do think it's a matter of how you tell the story, how you communicate, how you build that consensus. And ultimately, I think really understanding how the business is performing real time, that's going to be the argument that will win, in my opinion, 100% of the time. Who wouldn't want to understand the areas of the business that are doing well and the areas that might not be doing well, and really focus on improving those?
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with Anna King, CFO of Mesh Payments. Several years ago, when Anna King first began championing the benefits of real-time data, a sudden clamor around new customer activity afforded her the moment she had been waiting for. For her part, King had been appointed CFO of an early-stage company shortly after helping raise the company's Series C financing. While King's C-level appointment gave her new stature within the company, the move to leverage real-time data within the firm demanded something more. It demanded consensus building. And for King, not unlike so many of her finance leader peers, consensus building is often about seizing the moment and allowing the greater organization to see what you see. On today's episode, CFO Anna King shares a consensus-building moment that helped her advance the use of real-time data. That and much more after this. With so much change around us and your need for increasing agility, you have to equip your team to win, and you have to do it now. Join over 1,300 companies of all sizes using Planful to help plan and execute with greater confidence. Planful integrates your critical financial processes to serve the data you need, insights you demand, and the answers necessary to manage your business optimally. Planful lets you plan better, close faster, and report more accurately. And Planful's not just for finance and accounting. It's for the entire business to plan, collaborate, and drive increased financial performance. Take full control of how you administer and manage all of your financial processes and data, and put finance first collaboration at the heart of every decision. When finance is a team sport, you can be a champion. With Planful, you'll be a champion of finance. Get in the game by going to planful.com to learn more. Hello, we're speaking with Anna King, CFO of Mesh Payments. Anna, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
So we always begin with this question. We always begin by asking you to look back for us and try to identify some of those experiences that you feel really helped you advance, really helped your skills improve, and perhaps put you on that path to becoming a CFO. What would those be?
I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My parents owned their own business for over 30 years. Most of my aunts and uncles own their own businesses, and my sister also owns her own business. So I like to say being an entrepreneur is in my DNA. And that's why I decided to go to school for accounting and finance, because of my experience helping my parents with their business. And then in my career, I really gravitated to roles where I can be part of a team building a successful company. I've been extremely fortunate to work for incredible entrepreneurs and leaders. My first startup I worked for was Calabrio, which was recently acquired by the PE firm Thoma Bravo. And the CEO there was my first finance mentor. He was CFO when I started and was promoted to CEO while I was working for him. And he taught me the skills needed to become a successful CFO, starting with the fundamentals of accounting. how important it is to quickly close the books so the rest of the month can be spent on reporting and analysis, how the finance organization is really the connection between the rest of the company, and how important it is to communicate and share the results with the different departments and respective leaders. The insights that he shared with me, I now try to pass on to the team that I work with. And a specific example was his view that the balance sheet is the most important financial statement, and how if the balance sheet reconciliations are accurate, the rest of the P&L will be accurate. And so it was really a great experience working for him, and I learned a lot. I was also then incredibly lucky to be introduced to a serial entrepreneur for whom I worked for 8.5 years at a company called Transactis, and that was acquired by Mastercard in 2019. He had sold his first company to Wells Fargo and his second company to First Data, and he was an amazing storyteller. He taught me how important data is to telling the right story to investors, employees, and in our case at Transactis, to potential acquirers.
Transactis, you climbed the ranks there, I would imagine. Now, did you arrive as a mid-level finance executive, or how did you advance upward?
So I joined as a controller, and I spent a year there as controller at Transactis, and helped take the company through a successful Series C raise. And after the raise, the CEO came into my office and told me, look, the board and I are so grateful and impressed with the job that you have done. We want to promote you to CFO. And I was completely shocked. I was, of course, appreciative. I was a little hesitant, right? I was worried that I wasn't ready or I didn't have the right skill set. All of those feelings were racing through my mind. But I was really grateful for their confidence in me, and that really helped me embrace the role and really take on that leadership responsibility.
When you step into that role, was it already apparent that it was likely going to be the company was likely going to be sold? I mean, was Mastercard in the picture already, or?
No. So at that point, we were really trying to grow and scale the business. We had great partnerships with several banks already. It was a channel partnership model. When we sold to Mastercard, we had 30 of the top 50 banks as customers. And when I joined and a year later when I was promoted to CFO, it was really early on in that evolution. We acquired our first few banks, and we were really trying to scale and grow the business. So we knew that the goal for the next few years is to really put the process and procedures in place to allow the company to scale and then eventually get acquired.
I just want to get the time frame sort of straight here, because you were there 8 years. You arrived as a controller, and within a year later, you are the CFO of the company. So you were a CFO there for quite some time then.
That is right.
Okay. So along the way, were there other acquisitions, or was it organic growth for most of your tenure there as CFO?
Yes. So a month after I started, we acquired a company out in California. And so I spent, the first 6 months at my time at Transactis really integrating the two companies. I was able to successfully integrate the financials within 3 months, be able to create some synergies with the operating expenses, and really, bring on the employees. I was also in charge of HR, so it was my responsibility to help create a culture where we were one team, and that can be very difficult in acquisitions.
So highly entrepreneurial company begins doing acquisition. Had you done an acquisition before? I mean, had you done a capital raise before? I mean, you are stepping aboard the moving train, or what's the metaphor we're looking for? Is it a bus?
Yeah.
I don't know. But no, seriously, Anna, I mean, tell us. I mean, it seems like this was accelerated learning for you. And am I overstating that, or how would you like to put it?
Absolutely. It was, as they say, drinking from a fire hose. And,
I like that. I like that one better.
To be in a startup, you have to have that mentality, right? Where, you embrace the challenge, you really enjoy solving these problems and, helping push the company forward. And again, I was really lucky. The CEO that I worked at Transactis, this was his third company. So he knew the playbook. He really understood what it was going to take to get the company to a point where it was acquired. And so he was, a great mentor to me. We had really great investors as well that really helped guide me and show me, anytime I had a question, I could call them up and get advice from them. So that was really instrumental.
Did you mention that Mastercard was also a customer prior to the
They
transaction?
weren't, no, but we were partnering with them on their bill pay exchange product.
Is there any background you can give us how that deal went down? Was it just a day that there were discussions going on for 6 months and then suddenly somebody came up with the right approach? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was, it was definitely something that was being discussed. Again, we were partnering them with bill pay exchange. We also, though, had previously done a financing round with 5 of the top 10 banks. And so we were also in discussion with, we're already, partially owned by banks. Should we then get acquired fully by the banks and let it become a bank product like, originally Mastercard and Visa were, and EWS is currently. And so there were a lot of, options and things being discussed as to what to do with this very valuable company and important product to the different banks.
All right. Well, certainly your move to mesh payments, stepping into the CFO role there, it's obvious you were already quite familiar with the payments space. Can you share with us, did the mesh payments opportunity when it came forward, was it can you just mention if it was a recruiter or was it a relationship, or how did you land there ultimately? And then we'll ask you about mesh and what its offerings are.
Yeah, so I was introduced to Oded, the CEO, through one of the investors at Mesh. And, for me, it highlights the importance of networking and really building, that team around you who can introduce you to these potential opportunities.
Do you think you had done that? Because along the way, I know I get the sense that when you were plugged in on a job, you were plugged in. And maybe, many finance leaders after the transaction, they're like, okay, I've got to, really network and make sure people are aware I now have this skill set. And was there any sense of that, or did you think you did it steadily along the way?
I think I could have done a better job earlier on to really, put the time and investment into building those relationships. But, I think midway through, I really started, again, learning from the CEO at Transactis, really understanding how he built those relationships. That's really when I started to see the value and the importance of it. And so, yes, I was very heads down, but I also made time to connect and reach out and build those relationships. And I encourage, my team now to do the same thing. I really want, for me, I really feel like it's critical to continue to grow in your career, is to network and to meet as many people as you can.
Thank you, Anna. Let's ask you about Mesh Payments. What does this company do, and what are its offerings today?
So Mesh is a corporate spend management platform, and I love to tell this story because when I was at Transactis, I refused to let anyone have a corporate card. The CEO wasn't allowed to have one. I had one, and I kept it under lock and key. I just didn't want to manage the nightmare of tracking down receipts, having someone manually key in the transactions. And so for me, it just wasn't something that, it just felt like more work for the team. And so with the corporate spend platform that we've built, it really automates that whole process. And so the finance organization can set up a card for specific spend for a specific vendor, a specific time frame, assign it to an employee, and have control over what the employee is spending it on. And it's easy to turn off a card. It's easy to assign a card to another employee. And it really gives them visibility into what's being spent.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? What generation of the offering is out there? I mean, is this something that's been updated over time, or is it relatively new? Or give us a time frame, perhaps?
So the corporate spend management solution is very new. It's within the last 2 years that we've really turned this industry and really, switched the way companies think about it. So, before companies were either corporate card or reimbursements, right, where the employees pay with their own funds. And so what Mesh has built out is a platform that allows companies to manage all types of spend. So SaaS subscriptions can be managed. The finance team can understand if the company is paying for more licenses that are currently being used. You can set one card for a specific vendor that has a specific amount that can be charged every month, every quarter, whatever that subscription period is. We also have a travel product, which allows the finance organization to put that travel and expense policy in place before the employee goes on a trip. So they can set up a travel that has a specific budget for the airfare, for the hotel, for meals, and they don't have to worry that the employee will go out of budget or, spend something that is out of the policy. And then we also have, on-demand cards, we call them. So if you need to have a card to go, you're throwing an office celebration, someone can open up a card to allow them to, buy whatever they need for that specific reason. And so it gives the finance team real control over every part of that spend, and really eliminates the need to have the approval process on the back end. Everything is happening on the front end. And in addition, once the spend has happened, our platform will then match the receipts to the specific transaction. So there's no more chasing down receipts. And then it automatically integrates into the accounting system. So no more manual data entry. And really the effect is there's a shorter time for close, and it allows finance organizations to spend more of the month doing data and analytics and really helping the organization understand how the business is performing.
So could you give us maybe an abbreviated history of the company's capital structure?
Yeah, so the company was founded in 2018. The Series A and B was done before I arrived, but it was all early stage investments. We have a really great investors, TLV Partners, Marone Capital, who really funded the company at the beginning. And then Q4 of last year, Tiger invested in the company. So we did a $50 million raise with Tiger Capital. And then we just announced yesterday that we raised our Series C. And so we raised $60 million with Alpha Wave and existing investors.
We always like to ask you a little bit about as you stepped into the role. And again, that would have happened, when is that? Oh, earlier this year, I guess, yeah. January of this year. You're stepping in the finance function fully formed? No, not so much. Certain pieces still needed to be put in place. What can you tell us as you arrive about your priorities? I asked you a question a little later about your coming 12-month priorities, but I guess I'm curious about maybe that first 100 days. Why don't we ask you about that?
So when I joined Mesh, the accounting function was outsourced. And so my priority was to hire a great team and implement our own accounting system. I believe for a company to scale and grow, we need to be able to control our own destiny and not rely on external resources. And I'm a big believer in real-time data and analytics. And so I wanted the ability to put those systems in place. And so I'm proud to say we've hired a great team, and I'm really grateful that we were able to attract such talented individuals. And we've just finished implementing NetSuite. And so we've really achieved the goals I set for us for this, for the first 6 to 8 months of my time here. And I think we've just set ourselves up for success so that we can continue to scale, and that the finance organization, to your point, I'll talk a little bit later about how, I see us build out the next 12 months.
Having achieved that, we're 9 months later, really, from your arrival. All of that has happened. It begins with am I wrong? It began with the talent. Let me find some certain key people, perhaps, I don't know, a controller if you hired one.
No, that's it exactly. So, the role of finance and accounting has evolved so much. So, in my opinion, finance teams not only need to have strong accounting skills, but they need to understand data and technology. And so I really wanted to hire highly motivated people who had great analytical skills. And I think I've achieved that. And for me, I think it's more important to have that type of skill set than experience. And I can give a few examples of hires I've made in the past that were atypical. One was a woman who was an investment banker, but really wanted to join a startup. And she had great analytical skills, but didn't have any experience in accounting or startups. But she was one of the best hires I made. And she helped me build out our BI dashboards and is now running a team at Mastercard. And another atypical hire I made was a Spanish teacher. She was just incredibly motivated, and she was able to grow into any role that I gave her. And so, I think it's important, when I'm hiring, to be thoughtful in the hiring process and to really, to evaluate qualities outside of the resume. And especially in today's environment, where finding talent is really difficult.
You mentioned a technology application or what you adopted. I'm curious, do you have a comfort level there? Is that something you had done in the past, or where did you get that skill? Where do you have that confidence that you're making the right choice there?
Yeah, I feel like I've always been very tech savvy. That was something that I just gravitated towards when I was a kid. I remember, when we first got our first computer and like working with the DOS platform, and I had a cousin who really was really into it and kind of took me under his wing. And then in college, I worked for companies where I helped build out databases for them. And I did the same thing at Calabrio. I built a database for them. So I've always been very comfortable with technology. I know enough to make me dangerous. And so I knew that was something that was going to be really important at my prior company. And that's something I'm incredibly proud about. I connected our production data. It was a payments company. So I connected our production data, our accounting data, and our sales pipeline data. And we connected it to Power BI was the tool that we used. And we were able to see real time how much revenue we had made that day or that month to date. And we were able then to connect that pipeline data to forecast what the rest of the month would look like. And so that gave the management team a lot of great insights on where to focus their time and their energy. Maybe a specific customer wasn't doing as well as we had predicted, and to really dig in and see what we could do to, fix that. Or maybe there was a specific industry that was growing much faster than we anticipated. How do we put more resources to that specific segment? And so, I think the finance organization within the last 10 years, right, has really changed and is really now responsible for the data of the company and to make sure that they are helping the rest of the organization understand that data and to provide the tools to make quick decisions and execute on what the data is telling you.
But we're wondering, for those CFOs who are sort of trapped in legacy organizations where, the types of people you brought to the table to make that happen, the types of communications between different teams, organizations operate differently. No one is the same. But what you achieved, is there something you did to help get the mindset right around data and how reporting relationships didn't matter? We have this joint goal, and for now, we're going to all work together on this. Organizationally, were there steps you took, or?
Yeah, so change management is always, typically very difficult. And so I think, you really have to do a good job of selling, the reason and the rationale behind, why you want to implement these types of systems. So I had to get the CTO on board, right? Because I needed to borrow a dev resource, which is, as I'm sure we're all aware, is really hard to attain. And so I had to convince him that it was worth it, that it would help the business grow. I had to convince the CRO that by connecting the sales pipeline, his team would have better visibility. He would be able to communicate the success of his team better to the management team and to the board. And then also the implementation team, right? So they could understand how their teams are doing and give them the tools and resources and really help tell their story to the management team, right? So a lot of times there was this, hey, we have too many customers in the pipeline, we need more resources, right? And I was able to show through these dashboards that maybe that was the case and help get them the resources that they need. So I do think it's a matter of how you tell the story, how you communicate, how you build that consensus. And ultimately, I think, really understanding how the business is performing real time, that's going to be the argument that will win, in my opinion, 100% of the time. Who wouldn't want to understand the areas of the business that are doing well and the areas that might not be doing well and really focus on improving those?
I want to ask if you recall, if there was a metric or a number that you wanted part of the organization to begin paying closer attention to. It occurred to you that you needed to inform people differently. I don't know, but a situation where, and maybe you rearranged a dashboard to emphasize something more. I don't know. But anything come to mind when I ask for a metric that you've raised the profile of, or a number that you wanted to educate the organization differently about?
Yeah, so I think, again, it goes back to the different segments of the business, and obviously every company is different. But there were specific industries that we saw the adoption was just higher for our product, right? And those types of insights allowed us to then change the marketing spend or change the sales team's focus to those specific industries. There were certain products that were doing better than others. And so it really allowed us to think through those initiatives that we rolled out. There were specific features and functionality. Because I've connected the production data, we could see which features were being used and which ones were not. So maybe we shouldn't, if we had a roadmap that was focused on functionality that wasn't gaining a lot of traction, focus those resources on other features that were getting a lot of traction, that customers were using and engaging with. And so it really allowed the team to have that insight to quickly adapt to what we were seeing in the market.
How do you folks collaborate? How is it happening? And coming out of COVID or the pandemic, people have learned more to communicate remotely better, more effectively, I suppose. But can you share with us your approach? Does it involve in-person meetings, or are you against those? Don't know.
No, I love meeting people in person. I think it's great to have that face-to-face time. But I also think, look, COVID proved that people can work remotely and be very successful at it. And so I think as leaders, we need to be very flexible. But, the finance organization is really connected to every area of the organization, right? We have to partner with technology. We have to partner with product. We need to partner with the sales and the marketing teams. And so it's really important that we have a good relationship with all of the departments within the organization, and that we're communicating with them, that we're being helpful to them, that we're providing the data and tools that they need. I see myself, first job is to make sure the company is well capitalized, but the second job is to make sure the company has the data and the tools that they need, right? My goal as a finance organization is to provide each area of the organization the insights, their budget versus actuals, to be a partner with them.
Want to touch on talent with you, and I forget if you told us whether you have an HR person on board as well yet, but can you tell us about your mindset when it comes to talent? And given you had an earlier CFO tour of duty, curious if you find that talent's become a bigger part of the job for you.
So we do have an HR team here at Mesh, which is great. But, the finance team has to partner with HR, right? We need to help build out attractive compensation packages, negotiate benefits, and put, resources and tools in place for the employees. And, at Mesh, we do a really great job of onboarding employees. We set up meetings with all areas of the organization to explain what that specific team does and how it fits into the goals of the company. But what's really unique here at Mesh's customers are finance teams. So my team is able to help onboard new employees and really give them a perspective on our customer base. And I think it's really unique, and it's been a lot of fun to see, how we can help in that aspect as well.
Our attention is always drawn to the funnel, the sales team, the sales funnel. Again, reaching out to the sales team, I always think that's the area that many finance leaders struggle with, the sales leadership, looking into that pipeline. And do you guys use Salesforce?
We do, yeah, we use Salesforce. Yep.
Because I think your sales team probably is, used Salesforce for a good long time, and whether it's overlaps with some of the tools you're looking to leverage, or it is the tool you're leveraging, might be interesting. Is that something you can comment on or clarify for us? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a resource that the finance organization can use, again, to have more insights, especially when you're going through the budgeting process. You'll want to understand that pipeline. You'll want to understand the data that's in Salesforce and how you can use that to build out the forecast for the next, year, 2 years, 3 years. And so it's really important that the finance organization understands the data that's in Salesforce. And for me, I really like to connect the systems so that they talk to each other, that there's a way to really, tie the two together, the accounting, right, what's happened in the past, and then what's going to happen in the future, what we're predicting to happen in the future. So, again, at the last company, we didn't use Salesforce, but we kept the pipeline data connected to Power BI so that we could see in real time, what was supposed to close in the next month, 2 months, 3 months. And it really helped us keep the sales team focused, keep the management team's expectations aligned as to where the business was going and how quickly it was growing. And again, if you can see that it's growing faster than you anticipated, maybe there are additional hires that need to be made. Maybe there are additional things that need to be put in place. And to see that sooner than later really allows the company to be prepared for that growth.
Thank you for that. We are going to jump to our finance strategic moment question, where we ask finance leaders just to share one anecdote or story where they had a moment of insight along the way during their career. So you have these every day, but we're just looking for one that could reveal to us a moment of strategic insight that you had as a finance leader, given your lines of sight into the organization. Anything come to mind?
Yeah. So, I talked a lot about my last company, about the CEO, who's a great storyteller. And I think that really rang true through the acquisition process. And I really gained an appreciation for how to tailor the story to your audience, right? That's the first thing you learn in any public speaking class. Who's your audience? But it really rang true during that process because each acquirer had a specific business goal for the acquisition. And we could then tailor our presentation to those strategies. And so for me, that was a very aha moment, right? It really drove home how important it was to be able to tell our story. And what really allowed us to tell that story were all those tools we put in place. So we could pull the different BI reports and tailor the presentation to our specific audience.
Hi, it's Jack. I hope you're enjoying our talk with CFO Anna King of Mesh Payments. Here again, we have a finance leader whose finance strategic moment is about storytelling. Listeners might recall our last episode featuring CFO Andy Gerlain. His strategic moment could be boiled down to the one line, hey, words matter. And also, not unlike Anna King, it was Gerlain's CEO who was sort of the mentor here, and the CFO was the mentee. And it's just a much bigger story that's unfolding here. I think you might agree. Visionary storytelling is no longer the exclusive realm of the CEO. As the CFO role broadens, CFOs are stepping up and advancing their storytelling abilities. So words matter now more than ever for CFOs. We now return to our talk with CFO Anna King. we're going to jump to our mentoring round where we'll ask you, we might have covered this a little bit, but let's go back to the first time you stepped into the CFO role. Again, you were a year, I think, into your first CFO tour of duty, or as a controller, you step in. That first 90 days as a CFO, and again, you mentioned to us how you were with the company another 7 years. So think back to that first 90 days. If you could give yourself a piece of advice for all of what lay ahead, what would you give yourself?
I think I would try to tell myself, one, to take time for yourself, right? As you mentioned earlier, I am the type of person that is very heads down, and I think I perform my best when I, eat healthy, exercise, have downtime. So I think that's really important. But also to really nurture those relationships. I mentioned before how important I think networking is. So I think I would have started earlier to really build those relationships. And again, I had a great board. I could reach out to them anytime, and they were actively mentoring and guiding me as well. And so, those are that's the advice I give anyone who's really looking to become a CFO or grow into this role. Is it's important to build out those relationships, but also make sure you have time for yourself, because you need to be at your best when you're in these situations.
Speaking of time for yourself, we like to ask if you have a personal habit or part of a daily routine that you're known for. It's not necessarily something work colleagues would tell us. Maybe a family member might point it out. This is what Anna does. This is what we know her to do. Anything come to mind what that might be?
Yeah, so in the morning, I I wake up early, and I just spend a good half hour to an hour reading, meditating. I exercise, and I really just spend that time for myself. It's one of my favorite parts of the day, where it's quiet, and I get a lot of thinking done then.
Wondering if you have a book you'd like to recommend. Doesn't have to be a business book. Might be something you read to escape. Don't know. Anything come to mind?
So when I was thinking about this, I read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. And when the book came out, I was a young CFO, and I was a woman in a very male-dominated role. And I had struggled to find my voice and to figure out how to have my seat at the table. So the book was really inspiring to me. And obviously there are flaws in the idea that women, that all a woman has to do is lean in, right? There needs to be an environment. The company needs to really embrace diversity and inclusion. And that's also one of the reasons why I'm thrilled to work at Mesh. The majority of the management team are women. 40% of the company are women. And so, that's something that's I'm very passionate about, is really to make sure that we're being inclusive, that everyone has a voice, and that we give them the space to have that voice.
Excellent. Thank you. We are up to our final question, where we get to ask you to look forward finally. And we would like to know your priorities as CFO of Mesh Payments. What would those be over the next 12 months?
So again, it's a very unique role I have. I'm working for an organization that serves CFOs and serves finance organizations. So, my goal is to really partner with the product team, help test new features, suggest enhancements, continue to evangelize how our product helps finance organizations. And I really feel like every member of the finance team at Mesh can do that. So I really want our controller to have a voice and be able to actively participate in these conversations. And so, we'll continue to build out our internal processes and data and analytics. But for me, that's the priority, is to how can we help the company as a finance team working for a company that supports finance teams.
Anna King, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you so much.
Hello, listeners. Do us a favor. Be certain to subscribe to CFO Thought Leader on Apple Podcasts, or if you're an Android user, check us out on Spotify or Google Play. If you liked the show, please recommend it to a friend.